Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. I do have a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. You're all muted. We cannot hear you or see you, so don't worry about your dogs or your kids or whatever is in the background because we can't hear it anyway, so no worries. If you do have any questions, I'm going to be letting Dr. Becht know while we're going through if there's questions. So just feel free to put those in the chat box and we'll get to as many questions as possible. Also, this is being recorded, and after the webinar is finished, we will send an email to all of the people who registered. Just in case you have to step away or something, it'll have a link to the video so you can watch that later. I'm Michelle Morris with Consolidated Planning Group. Allison, her information is up on the screen as well. She is the company CEO. She couldn't be here today, so I get the privilege of introducing you to Dr. Kathleen Becht, and she is going to talk to us today. Do you want to go ahead and take over, Doctor?
Sure. Thank you so much, Michelle. Welcome, everyone. And I'm happy to be here. I wish I were in Texas, but that's okay. I'll take Florida. It's so much more fun to see people's faces and your responses, and even if you don't know you're responding. But we do what we can right now. So welcome. And I am doing this presentation for Consolidated Planning Group. But I want to give you a little bit about myself. As Michelle said, I'm Dr. Kathleen Becht, and I'm privileged to work with ThinkCollege in creating opportunities for students with disabilities to not only gain their independence or interdependence and a career of their choice, but to develop some advocacy skills and that they will use for speaking up for themselves and sometimes for others. Today, I want to focus on the last of these important skills, and that is developing advocacy. No, that's not, this must be an old one. Sorry about that. So today, I'm like, wait a minute. So what I want to do is share a little bit about myself, and so that you kind of know where this is coming from. As a parent presentation, I am a parent of a young man, Pete right here, who has intellectual disability and Down syndrome. And Pete is now 32 in a couple of months. Oh, I keep telling me, you can't tell me how old he is. He went to college when he was 27. So I know sometimes people ask, well, what if, they're older than 26? It depends on the program. So Pete had lots of interesting adventures while he was in college. I will tell you that I don't think he would have been ready when he was 21. Every student is different. But while he would say he was ready to leave and to be free from mom and dad, I don't know that he would have been ready at that point. So I do have two other kids. Pete is my oldest at 32. Then I have Marcia is, I have to remember, 28, and Patrick is 24, soon to be 25. And all my guys are adopted, but don't put me on a pedestal. I didn't really know what disabilities, we were looking at. That wasn't part of the adoption, but I will tell you, it doesn't matter. There are no guarantees, and my kids are all wonderful kids. So, but they do have disabilities, and it is something that we all work to help our students understand and to be able to live well with their abilities and disabilities. So this is Pete. He graduated in 2019. He went to a 3-year program at University of Central Florida. And I'll probably share a story or two because he cracks us up even to this day. So I am an educator. I taught students in elementary through high school for 10 years, all students with disabilities, various different types of disabilities. I also have a sister who has intellectual disabilities. So for me, disability is truly a part of the human condition. It's just part of who we are. And My sister has intensive support needs. Her language is minimal, but she gets her point across when she needs to, like telling me that there's no Oreos at her house. That's an important piece. She's a year younger than I am. I'm not gonna tell you how old she is, but she's over 50. And she gets her points across. So I stayed home for about 20 years, which is like hard to believe I can say 20 years. When I was raising my kids. So I taught for a number of years and then stayed home. And then I went back to school and I had this brainy, crazy, off the cuff idea that I would get my doctorate, which I did. And hardest thing I have ever done. So now I'm back in, the working world and have been working with a program at University of Central Florida in the Orlando area. It's actually the largest college in the United States, numbers wise, number of students wise. Second is Arizona. We kind of go back and forth between who's the largest each year, but excuse me. And so we have a program there at University of Central Florida that started just a couple years ago. It's not very old. And so I am the technical assistance coordinator for ThinkCollege. I help to update the resources on the website. Actually, I don't do the updating, but I help get new resources. If we've got some that broken links, that kind of thing, I try and get new pieces out there. I coordinate about 16 consultants across the country to conduct training and technical assistance to colleges and school districts. And then I do this myself and a number of us, a number of the consultants then also support and talk with families who have students with intellectual disability and inform them about college opportunities and how to prepare for college. So there is a lot on our website. And I'm not going to go into that right now, but I do want you to make sure you'll see it right there on the slide. www.thinkcollege.net is where you will find a lot of information. We have over 1,000 resources. I will also tell you that Michelle let me know that when you get an email, I don't know, in a couple hours or so after we're done with the webinar, that you will have a clickable PDF. So that I have a lot of links in this PowerPoint. And so you will be able to click on them and go to the resource that I'm talking about. So that was really helpful to know. There's also a document where I put all the links in one place and gave that to Michelle. And so you should get that in the follow-up email as well.
I also try to, as you go through, I try to type things into the chat box that, people might want to write down, like thinkcollege.net. And I just want to remind everybody, because a few new people have joined us, if you have any questions or comments that you want to share, just put them in the chat box. I'll be able to see them and let Dr. Kathy know. Go ahead.
All righty, perfect. So before I go any further, what I'd like to do is kind of give you a sense of, what do we mean by inclusive post-secondary education? Whoops. And so I'm going to play a very short video for you.
Can I ask you a question? Sure. Can you tell me about your college experience?
Sure. I came from a really small town. I loved it a lot. Really taught me a lot about life and life skills. Helped me come out of my shell.
College was great. It set me on the path that I'm on today. It took me to Peace Corps, and now it took me to a new job.
Oh, college was great. I owe my career to it. I even met my wife there.
Who do you think should go to college?
I think everyone should go to college.
I think everybody should go to college.
Anybody that wants to.
What about people with intellectual disabilities?
What?
That's a good question.
I've never really thought about that.
I have pretty high expectations for myself, and then there's always the expectations of the professors, and it's the blend between the two that is most important. I've always found a way to do well or do my best in all of my courses, no matter what.
I do know that she belongs in this classroom because she has a lot to offer, and she thinks about the works that we're discussing, and the class accepts her on that level completely.
The people in school see, oh, she has a disability, don't talk to her, she's so different from everybody else. But here, they accept you as who you are, and they say, you're a college student, you're a human being, you're the same thing here.
I think there's so many ways how kids can look at so many challenges where we face. There's so many ways how people can change.
The University of North Florida is a great experience for people to relate to college. And they did not ask me if I wanted to go to college. I chose to go to college because I thought that that would be a better path in life for me. It's freedom, basically.
The dream is me going to college and being like a graphic designer or something to do in art. Art is like my passion.
All my family pretty much went to college, and I said, why not me? Even though I have a disability, I can still go. I can go anywhere I want to go.
We're helping these particular students become more productive citizens and more well-rounded citizens of our country. I think it's just really important. We don't have throwaway people.
It's really enriched the people on this campus, and it's just made it a much nicer place to work. It just amazes me how well it's gone and how proud everybody is of it, both internally and externally, and what it's done for these kids' lives.
We are working with a very important part of our population that has traditionally been underserved. A second major reason is because Kennesaw State itself wants to be as inclusive as it possibly can and provide high quality education for anyone who wants to obtain that education. And the third is possibly the most basic of the three. It's just simply the right thing to do.
The revolution is kids with disabilities going to college and having the opportunities. And I just really want to stoke those flames and get that fire, that revolution really going, because this is where the revolution begins. It begins now. It begins with us.
All right, now I got to figure out how to get this. I'm going to stop sharing for just a minute. And no, don't start that. There we go. There we go. All right. And go back to share screen. All right. And so I wanted to give you a sense of, what are we seeing when we talk about college for students with intellectual disabilities? What does that actually mean? And so you all are in Texas, and this is actually a year or so old, so it may be more than 13 programs in the state of Texas. I didn't go back and double check, but I figured 13 is pretty darn good. Around the country, you'll see some programs have one. Wyoming now does have one, even though it's blank there. But so every state has one, but imagine how many colleges there are in the country. Thousands. This is only like 6% of all the colleges. So we've got a ways to go, but look at how many are available. So it is really exciting to think there are over 300 programs across the country that have programs for students with intellectual disabilities. And so how does it happen? So I want to give you a sense that the paradigm is changing for our students. What it takes to go to college, what it takes to belong there, who can belong there, and who can benefit from a college education. And this happens through an alternate pathway. So right now, in most colleges, except for those 300 or so, students have to take placement tests or essays. They are pursuing a degree, and they receive reasonable accommodations. But for students with intellectual disability, there's an alternate non-matriculating pathway for college. Students may or may not be pursuing a degree. Most are not, because they do have intellectual disability, which means that generally their academic and their, well, primarily their academic, but also to some degree their social skills are going to be considerably behind. And so it would be extremely difficult to access all of that college content on that level. And so in order to obtain a degree, like a bachelor's degree, these students go through what we call person-centered planning all through the college years, so that helps to really help them focus on what they want to get out of being there. There are also individual supports for the students, and there is a focus on employment. Now, some people will say, you know, I want my kid to go to college, but they don't need to get a job. Well, I want you to think about why we go to college, anybody. And it really is to get a better job than what you might have gotten otherwise. And even if maybe I don't have to work, a job for me is a purpose. It is, and particularly my job, because I have so much passion embedded in what I do. And I think that is really crucial. And I don't want us to lose that opportunity for students with intellectual disabilities to have the ability to give back, to have a purpose in their life where they are giving back. And so this chart illustrates some of the key differences that you're going to see. Test scores like SATs and ACTs aren't required. A regular high school diploma is not required. Specific courses in high school that are maybe what you've heard before, college prep, are not required. And so then let's talk about what is required, or what are components of a program for students with intellectual disabilities to attend college. And those key components really are include academic college courses, residential living. About 20% of that 300 college programs have access for our students in the dorms or on a residential setting. To have employment. And then, a big component of it are those extracurricular activities. And for our students, there's some requirements in that area. And all of these pieces enable soft skills to be learned, all of these components. And so I'm going to talk about a couple of them, if my slides will move forward. There we go. So students enroll in college courses for credit or audit. And audit means they took the course and they can get a pass-fail, which means they still did the work or some of the work, and they passed it or they didn't pass it. And so often many of our programs, not all, but many, the students with intellectual disabilities audit the courses. And so, but they are regular college courses. And that's the big key to bear in mind, that the students are taking typical college courses. If they're auditing the course, they can have the course modified for them. Let me correct that, not the course itself, but the course requirements or the student work products that the student is asked to do. So for example, a very simple example would be if a professor said, all right, everyone's going to write a 10-page paper by the end of the semester. He might say to that student with intellectual disabilities, and I've got for you, I would like you to do me a 5-page PowerPoint with pictures that are going to, and then, give you the topic, which would be the same topic, but it's going to be a different modality of providing the information for that professor, a different work product, if you will. And so students generally are supported by, there's all kinds of names, but tutors or mentors, which are their peers without disabilities or without intellectual disabilities on the college campus. So they're other students. And so that's the best kind of peer or mentor, because they kind of know, they get it. Yeah, this is stressful. We got this due and this due and this due, and you can do it though, it's okay. And then some programs do have specialized classes just for students with intellectual disability. That wouldn't be my preference, but it's still a very, very new field of college for students with intellectual disabilities. And so we're still trying to figure out how to do it and how to provide them with the knowledge and the content they need to then be successful after they graduate in a job, and if possible, in interdependent living. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And so let's look at, the housing and life skills. We're really talking about strengthening independent and interdependent life skills. Let's face it, the vast majority of us are not totally independent. We're interdependent on somebody. I'm really dependent on my husband for a whole lot of things. One is all this stuff on the insurance and all that stuff is his job. I'll do this piece. And when I was younger, when he was working and I was home, I did all the bills. So he was dependent on me. There's that interdependency. And that really is what we want our students with intellectual disabilities to understand, that it's okay to rely on someone to help you with this component, but maybe these things I do myself. And so there are these things where someone else's skill set may be stronger. And so there is some interdependence, whether that's for living arrangements, whether that's for paying bills, all kinds of areas that occurs. So oftentimes when you hear independent life skills, I think in my head, interdependent life skills, because these students are still getting support to grow or increase in their skill sets. Do they have roommates? Most definitely. Again, it's awfully expensive to have a program or a residential housing without a roommate. How are roommates selected? Well, in on-campus housing, now I'm talking about for those programs that do have the residential, the roommates are selected in different ways. It depends on the program. Some programs, the roommates are just taken out of a lottery and it's somebody without a disability. In other cases, they are students that are paired and matched up with them who may have a disability. In other cases, they're only other students from the program, only other students with intellectual disabilities. I would suggest to you, and it's been my experience in watching these programs grow, that I know my son and some of his peers do way better if their modeling comes from a student without intellectual disabilities. There's good and bad with that, granted. Sometimes they learn the bad words, sometimes they learn about playing beer pong, sometimes they learn about other things, but you know what? This is part of the process. And what they don't do if they're living with their non-disabled peers is they don't get into this craziness that is it's almost like a cycle of complaining about each other, because not all of the students with intellectual disabilities have a hard time pulling out of that argument. Whereas you have someone without an intellectual disability, they'll look at you and go, that's stupid, man. Why are we doing that? Come on, let's go do this. And it's reality. And so that's really what we're looking for our students. And so, so the expectations for the independent skills, I do want to mention that it is important to realize that the majority of the programs will not help your son or daughter take medicine. That it becomes a liability, it becomes an issue, that is on that son or daughter and or the parents if there's some medicine that they take on a regular basis. And so, but you know what? Even my son who doesn't have an intellectual disability, has a learning disability, but not an intellectual disability, my other son, he will call me and say, Mom, now what do I take when I have a cold? Do I take Tums? Or I'm like, seriously? You don't know this? You should know this. There's things you forget to teach, And so that's not unusual for any young adult going away to college. There's things that they now are I gotta know this. Which one do I take that's gonna help that?
Can I just say, my son is 20 and away at college in Chicago. And he called the other day saying that he had a sore throat and he was drinking tea. And I said, well, keep drinking tea and maybe put some honey in it and take your allergy pills, because I bet that is allergy related.
Exactly. And it's to
be reminded.
Well, and for parents who have children with disabilities, if you don't also have other children without disabilities, and even if you do, it's really hard to remember that other kids are dealing with these issues too. It's not just a disability issue. And so that's really good. You go, oh, okay, I'm not the only parent that forgot to teach them that one, so it's nice to know that. There are some programs, not very many, that have off-campus housing that is like a house or an apartment where the students are just students within the program are living. So they're living away from home, off campus. Typically it's like within walking distance of campus, like a block away kind of thing. So in many cases, the students living in any of these dorms and apartments are, while they're off campus, it's all college students there. And so there are some of those, just to give you a sense of that. And so let's look at community life. And so this slide used to say, I borrowed this slide from another presenter, and it used to say independent life skills, which I just struggle with that. So it's really, we're talking about community life. So what is it in the community that my son or daughter needs to be doing? And this is when they're in college. So these are some of those expectations that they'll be learning in a college program. So enrolling in college courses for credit or audit. In some programs, the students are enrolled, someone else enrolls the students. In other programs, the students do their own enrolling, and it's confusing for anybody. The responsibility for courses and coursework. Our students with intellectual disabilities have responsibility to get their coursework in on time. I have to tell you, my son, who doesn't have an intellectual disability, the one with learning disability, the first 2 college classes he took, it was before COVID started, and he took 2 college classes and had to go through the learning management system, which is whatever the system that the college is using online. And he failed both courses because he couldn't figure out where the email was, because now he had like 3 different emails to go to. He couldn't figure out where the assignments were. It was really confusing to him. So I was really glad we had him take those 2 courses first. And then by the next year, he was starting to get a handle on it. He started to get, and he did those while living at home. So it takes a while to figure out all these new tools that for any student, it can be confusing. But for the students with intellectual disabilities, they are also using these tools, because particularly since COVID, with so much being online, they use these tools. So the more your student does have some awareness of their own computer and what they're doing on it and how they're navigating to different places, the better. Natural consequences is a big piece. And if a student, for example, my son, Pete, who graduated from the program a couple of years ago, if he's in a job and he's not doing well, he needs to be let go. He doesn't need to be held on and on. He needs to understand the consequence, the natural consequence of that job, particularly if he had a job coach, he had support, but motivationally, he really wasn't getting into it. So he needs to understand you're going to lose this job. And that's a natural consequence. Our students need the opportunity to fail. Granted, maybe a moderated failure, but to learn what it's like to fail and how to dust yourself off, get back up again, and start over. And that's a resilience that our students can learn and need to learn if we're encouraging them along this path. They'll also be doing internships, paid jobs on and off campus. Internships may be on and off campus. And attending campus life and organizational activities. So that might be going to the karate club. Whatever they choose is their interest. It might be going to a chess club or going swimming because the dorm is having a swimming party that day. In Florida, we all have pools. So there's a swimming party.
It looks like we're having some troubles with some audio issues here. Hopefully she'll be right back, but until then, just take a moment.
Okay, am I back? Okay, you can hear me, you just can't see me for some weird reason. Let me put my, okay, not sure what happened there.
Okay, I don't know what happened, if that was my computer or yours or the whole system or whatever, but it looks like we're back up and running, right?
Good, okay, yes.
Good. Okay, back to it.
Let me reshare my screen. It's like, whoa, I think everyone's gone. All right, so let me go back up here and reshare. You know, this is those things, you just have to figure it out and keep going.
There you go.
So the last piece I have on here is learning what and how to use supports to live successfully. And it is important that our young adults begin to identify what support they need to be successful. So it's really important that they begin to find and problem solve on their own. And so that's a really important piece to begin to think about. And so this page was titled The Student Experience, but I want you to know that going to college is way more than an experience. And people who are involved with vocation rehabilitation, which is a employment support system that is really across the country, they will say, well, we don't support college experience. And so it's really important that, yes, it's a college experience. When I went to college, I wanted that college experience. My son wanted that experience. But at the end of the day, there is a degree I'm trying to earn, and there is a certificate these students are trying to earn and need to be getting. And so it's really crucial that we shift that mindset from student experience to activities and a program where we are earning a certificate. And these students, though they may be taking courses for audit, are earning a certificate toward that will help them in getting jobs when they're finished. So more community life and co-curricular activities. We're looking at things like social support from peers and mentors. So remember I said peers and mentors will help with their support for academics, also for social, that's another component. It's really scary to go to a club I've never been to before and not know anyone or what it is I need to do or where it is. And so again, these are programs, these are support mechanisms to help our students do that, to get involved. So we've had students involved in student government. Believe it or not, students involved in Greek life. Now that is not widespread across the country, but it is happening, and they're learning more and more how to get into the Greek life system, because it's been a little bit of a tough road to go. Intramural sports. We have some young adults. We had one that was in school with my son, that he was a runner, and he wanted to be doing some of that intramural support. Sports. And so one of the keys is that we ask ourselves, we ask the program we're interested in, is my student considered a legitimate student on campus? Because that's really crucial to allow for these activities to be happening. And so while many of the programs do say that student is a legitimate student, college student on campus, there are some that will tell you, no, they're a visitor or they're a guest. And so you really want to know about what that means. And so again, as I have down here, our students should be developing interdependence on campus. So employment is a huge component of it. And I always caution parents that if you don't want your son or daughter to get a job, then maybe these college programs aren't for them. Because when we at ThinkCollege, at the National Coordinating Center, and the colleges, when we are graded, if you will, or assessed for how our programs are doing, the metric is employment after college. And so that's for all programs, whether it's a program for a student with intellectual disability or not. And so really we're encouraging families to say, this is important, employment is important. So they really look at what are some of the career goals that the student might have. And if they don't have any, then we start building them during those person-centered planning activities that I talked about. Again, as I mentioned, they'll have internships where they work on campus and off campus, and that could include paid work study. They may have paid jobs on and off campus. This is another question that you as a parent or as your son or daughter wants to ask. Do I get paid for these experiences? And then they get support and direction in finding paid employment after graduation. Not all programs are doing that. That's a question you want to ask, because that's a crucial piece in that, what's the outcome of this college experience, of this college program. And so now I want to go over briefly, and I'm trying to watch my time, what are the program options? And so when you go to a college program and, go and do a visit, what are the things you need to know? Well, what's the length of the program? What are the levels of support that they can provide? Because every program around the country of these over 300 that I talked about will provide different levels of support, A, depending on the student, but also B, depending on what level of support they have staffed up to provide. So if they don't have the staff to do 24/7 support, then you're not going to get that at that institution. The vast majority do not provide 24/7 support. So where that student is, they choose to go to the football game on campus on a Sunday afternoon if they want to or not. And they may go with a mentor or they may go by themselves, but they're making choices in their downtime. And then the next component is, I'm sorry, let me back up, the program of study. So you want to not only ask what level of support, but how long is the program? So is it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? Very few are 1 year, and those are typically the career and technical education programs. And those are fine as well. That's just a very different kind of a program. And so every program you look at, you should be asking, what is the program of study and what is the certificate that my son or daughter will earn? Tell me about it. I want to see how many courses they're expected to take, how many hours, because every college program of study, if I go for education, I know I'm going to have to take this many classes. And often they're laid out as to what they are. And then I have electives of the things I'm interested in beyond what my career focus is. It should be the same for these students. Size of the campus is a big one that sometimes we don't think about, because initially it was, well, who has these programs? That's where we want to go. Well, now we're starting to get enough programs to say, for you to say, well, I want my son or daughter in a smaller program where they're going to get maybe more attention. And that may or may not be the case, but you want to identify how big is this program, how many students are typically enrolled each year in this program. And I have seen anywhere from really 2 to 3 to 50. The vast majority are closer to about 7 to 10 students, depending on the program and depending on the size of the campus as well. Student age, I talked about this just briefly earlier with Pete. There are concurrent enrollment. Sometimes you will hear dual enrollment for students without intellectual disabilities, which is where the high school is paying for the student to take a college course while they're still in high school, and they get credit for their course both at the college level and at the high school level. I don't think we have that happening, but we do have concurrent enrollment where, again, they're getting support from the high school while they're still under IDEA funding. They're still enrolled in high school. It may be their 22nd year or 22nd age, or they may be 23 or 24. And so that would be called concurrent enrollment. The majority of the programs are full-time college enrollment, or sometimes what we call PSE only, post-secondary ed only. There is no connection or support from the high school. And so that's important to be aware. There's 2 different kinds. And then I mentioned a little bit earlier about the residential options, and there's different levels of support. No one came and woke my son up when he stayed up till 4 in the morning playing video games with a friend to then make it to his 8:30 class. So he missed his 8:30 class. And then, so now we've got some natural consequences happening. But that program that we went to, they don't do that. You may have some programs that do. If you think that's needed, there's a question for you. And then again, the types of supports, what level of supports are they going to be providing? While my son doesn't, he doesn't read time unless it's on a digital clock. He understands it's 10:30. I have to be there at 10:45. I better leave now. But he doesn't recognize time sense, that it's going to take me 30 minutes to walk there. So I should have left 15 minutes ago. So that piece he doesn't quite have. So again, we use some strategies to kind of try and work around that for him. Even if he got there 15 minutes early, that was better than being really late. And so again, there may or may not be supports for that piece, but that's another piece you want to be thinking about as your son or daughter is still in high school. And then the programs have full and measured inclusion. So as I mentioned before, some programs have classes that are just for students with intellectual disability in them, as well as the college courses that they take that are in the course catalog. There are a few programs listed on the college search page, on ThinkCollege's college search page, that are this more separate programming. But really, the goal is that we're getting students in general ed courses, in their college courses with their peers. And just to give you an example, my son reads at about a 3rd to 5th grade level, depending on what it is. He has real good sight word reading. So once he learns a big word, he remembers it. But his reading is not real great. But we used a lot of strategies, books on tape, but now we're going to digital books, digital textbooks, where it highlights it as it reads it. There's lots of different ways to help with that, with those kinds of things, as well as the professor modifying the work that is expected of the student. So those are some ways that kind of fits that piece in. How do they take a regular class? They do. So how do you help in preparing your son or daughter for college? And so now I want to really focus you on the ThinkCollege website. And it's the thinkcollege.net, and it's there on the screen. And we have a specific section for students and families. There are small, short little videos for students to watch or parents to watch, but for the students to look at it and get a sense of it, there are, let me make my slide a little bigger, let's see. There are information about working with a coach or a mentor that, or tutor. Again, as I said, there's a number of different titles for that position. There's a video that talks about, well, what is intellectual disability and how do I know what I'm talking about, or what is intelligence? There is a video that is the ThinkCollege going to college video. What I showed you earlier was just a trailer. There's actually, that video is about 45 minutes long. And so you can find that in here as well. So this is a page or number of pages that you'll want to look at. And then the other thing that I have mentioned is our ThinkCollege search pages. And so here are a number of, there's areas in here in which you can just say, I want to look in Texas, and it'll come up with the Texas programs. So there's a little search engine within here. You can also click favorite, so that'll keep it as your favorite for a number of programs that you're interested in. So there's a number of resources here in this ThinkCollege search page as well. And then when we talk about how do we help our students get prepared, so but beyond looking at the colleges and saying, what college do you want to go to? There are attitudes learned at home that are really crucial. Having high expectations and teaching support strategies. Teaching natural support. So one of the things that I often tell families is, don't answer the question, ask a question to a question. So what you want to be doing is, if my son comes in and says, Mom, do I have my voice lesson today? I'll say, I don't know, do you? Where can you look? Oh, on my calendar. Okay. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to show him he's already got that knowledge. He needs to go find it. Where is it that you keep that information? And so you really want to work on asking a question to a question. You want to work on respecting voice and choice. So letting your son or daughter disagree with you, tell you, I don't think that's right, and that's okay. And allowing them to make some choices, And again, sometimes we choose specific choices between, you can choose between these three things. And that's, so you've already narrowed it down some, that these are the three ones I'm comfortable with. You can choose between these three, or they're going to find it on their own. My son has decided that he wants to buy a microphone that is, it's like a karaoke microphone, but he's gone online and he's found them on the internet and said, Mom, this is what I want. And I said, okay, well, let's see how we need to order that and how much is it and what does that mean? And so we start talking about those pieces, but he's already figured out I can find what I want to look for. Now remember, his reading level isn't that high, but the internet remembers things that you've looked for in the past. And so that's really helped him as well. Enable the self-reliance. And that was one of the things that I talked about regarding if you let them fail, let them get up, then they'll begin to say, oh, wait, I can figure that out. Or if you ask the question to their question, you're teaching them that, but you know that, you can do that, you can make that choice. One day, my son, this was years ago after he graduated from high school, and he was going to a community college nearby. He took 2 classes there when we first got out, because these programs, at least they didn't exist that I knew of in our area. And so we taught him to ride the city bus. He took the bus down to college. And then after college was over, he would take 1 class or 2 classes a semester. When college was over, then he would come back on the bus and I would pick him up at the bus stop because it was too far from our house and it crossed a 5-lane road, which my husband didn't want me crossing. So he was late one day. He was an hour and like a half late, and I was in a panic. He wouldn't answer his phone. I didn't know where he was. Finally, he calls me and says, Mom, I'm almost at the bus stop. And I said, okay, good. I figure I'll wait till he gets here. And so he got in the car and he said, and I said, where have you been? He said, oh, I stopped at McDonald's and got lunch. Okay, in my head, okay, that's what I want. I want him to be able to make choices, to know that even though he stopped at McDonald's, he could get back on the bus, not the same bus, but the next bus that was still going to take him where he needed to go. So that was really a win. It just panicked the heck out of me. But so we talked about, okay, when you change your plans, what do you think might be good to do if someone's waiting to pick you up? You know, but that's what we want, is that sense of self-reliance is really crucial. And again, getting back to that answer a question with a question, wait, don't rescue. If it's a situation in which they can not be rescued, don't rescue them, wait. And see how they'll solve the problem. That's really crucial. And there are way more situations like that than we are aware of until we start really trying to focus on them. So that's another really great thing, is to tell yourself, wait, don't rescue. One of the things that my husband and I had done for years is, because this is my field, so I'm teaching him, okay, here's what we're going to do with my son, and here's how we teach him to be his own person. And so then one day my husband says to me, Kathy, why are you talking for Peter? I was like, oh, damn. Okay, you're right. I should, but he's just going so slow, And so what we did was we now catch each other out loud so that Peter hears it. And so we've begun to almost set it up. Now we don't do it nearly as much as we used to, but when he was younger, when he was in high school, we would kind of catch each other. And now Peter says, Mom, why are you doing that for me? I can do that myself. Bingo, that's what I wanted. So it's not easy for the parent, but it's really crucial to help them understand how to politely tell someone they can do that. Thank you. And that's really important, because when we go out in society hasn't learned all these things that we're still trying to figure out. And so they're going to do things for them, and they're going to buy things for them, and they're going to be really frustrated with them because he didn't understand something, and they won't understand why not. So those are the things that we look at, how not to rescue them, but how to teach them to have a voice. And I mentioned the dignity of failure. It's also called the dignity of risk. and then be future focused. When my son was 6, we started telling him, you're going to move out, you're going to have a job, you're going to, all these things we tell him. We didn't tell him he was going to college because there was no such thing as that then. He's 32, remember? So that one didn't even occur to me. But we let him know from little on up. So he knew his goal was to be independent, to figure stuff out. Now, mind you, he probably did things that I wasn't really prepared for, like riding his bike to the 7-Eleven a mile away when he was 6. But he understood that he has agency, that he can make decisions for himself. And mind you, that often causes clashes with us, but doesn't it with every young adult or child that you have? And that's part of the growing up years. Then probably one of the most important pieces is teach for the change in the parent role through middle school and high school, just like the example I gave you about, Kathy, why are you talking for him? Between my husband and I, and then my son saying, Mom, really, I can do this myself. You're just being so slow. Okay, yes, you're right. You can do it yourself. I'm going to walk out of the room. I'm going to handle this because you should be doing it yourself. And so really consider that change in the parent role. And our students or children need to have more time to understand this change in role. Sometimes they don't, but they really do need more time to understand how to deal with this. Volunteerism is a really big one. Before they leave high school, they should be volunteering for something because that helps them. Again, there's that purpose, that sense of giving back. My son will tell you that when he goes to the Y to volunteer, that they depend on him. When he was in high school, he went to Catholic Heart Work Camp 2 or 3 years in a row during the summer. It was a week there, and he would go and he'd say, Mom, he'd come home and say, I made a difference. Yeah, that's that inner sense of self-belonging, expectation of himself, all those pieces that you want your sons and daughters to understand. Everyone's going to have it at different levels. Don't get me wrong. And we went with him to the Catholic Heart Work Camp. He didn't go by himself. One of us was there, although not necessarily on his team, but we were there to help with issues and whatnot. Expect your high schooler to get a job. And always celebrate the successes, that those are just really, really crucial. So I know I'm almost out of time here, so I just want to mention there is this Preparing for Post-Secondary Life is a tool that's there for you. And then I also have a tool that's college knowledge. These are things that as a parent, you need to understand. And each one of these is a linkable document that you need to understand FERPA, because once our students go to college, we as parents do not have a right to know what their grades are. Doesn't matter who's paying for it. Doesn't matter. We don't have a right because of the FERPA Act, and there's one more, which I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. There's federal financial aid that will help your son or daughter to get into college. There's the ABLE Act, which I'm sure a number of these things that they've already talked to you about or have videos on through Consolidated Planning Group. But we also have information on ThinkCollege. That's where these links go to. Documenting ID or intellectual disability is something that you should have on your current IEP if the student is in college, and or on an assessment, a psychological assessment that was done for your son or daughter. And those are typically tools that the programs will need to identify that they have an intellectual disability. And I'll tell you why, because there weren't enough dollars for this law that was passed in 2008 to get all of these students with more significant disabilities into college. So they focused on this group of students with intellectual disabilities who couldn't get to college any other way because they couldn't pass the ACTs and the SATs. They couldn't do it. And so this was the group they focused on. And so that's why many of them have that requirement. Not all of them do on the website of those over 300, but many do. And if you want to access the federal financial aid, that's a piece of it. They have to have intellectual disability. Could they have autism and ID? Yes. Could they have just autism but not an intellectual disability? No, because then those students should be going to a degree seeking program. Those students, I know they're going to struggle and they're going to need support, but they don't need this kind of support. They need to be in a degree seeking program. So don't sell your kids short. Disability disclosure is a piece that the offices for students with disabilities at each of the colleges, they require. The student has to come ask for help. It's different than what the student was entitled to when they were in high school, elementary, middle, and high. Once they get to college, it's no longer an entitlement, it's an eligibility. That's why they need that documentation. ThinkCollege publications. This piece, the Student College Resource Guide, is like my #1 go-to for families and for students. So click on that one. It's a wonderful full color handbook for students. And I think it's a great tool for you as families to talk with your students about going to college. It's just a really wonderful tool. Some other tools that are online for you that you can share with other parents, share with other students. And then this is a number of pages tool that is really wonderful, that talks about kind of what's expected in college and what's expected in high school, or what do you need to do in high school to prepare for it. So I'm not going to go into these pieces, but I want you to know that they're there. And again, that'll be one of the documents that's on the link page of links that I'll give you. So what's one thing you can do in preparing for college? Help your son or daughter know that's their goal. Help them realize it and begin to search on the internet for the information. This is a couple of pages. We have a families Facebook group that I know Meredith is going to put in the email to you all in a little bit. So that's one piece, but then we also have a number of pages. When you have any questions at all, you can write there, ThinkCollege TA as in technical assistance @gmail.com, and you'll get me. Email me the question and I'll do my best to answer. If I don't know the answer, then I'll send it to one of my other number of consultants who might have experience in that area. Okay, I rushed through that. There's just so much to tell you. And then this is the resource handout for you. So thank you for having me. I hope this was helpful. I didn't get any time for questions. I'm sorry.
Well, Linda, I think you did such a great job going through everything. I mean, Linda, I saw one of the names on your chat was Linda. Sorry. We did have one question, but it was really about Texas and the kind of supports available here. And I suggested that they go to our YouTube channel, the Consolidated Planning Group YouTube channel, to see some of the other webinars we've done with some of our other partners. But you have just been so helpful and so informative that people didn't need to ask very many questions. Plus, we're going to email out this webinar and send a clickable format so people can click on all these links and rewatch for any questions that they might have. Some things to think about in terms of Consolidated Planning Group and why you might want to go ahead and schedule an appointment with us. Go ahead and go to the next one if you don't mind. We can talk about all kinds of great information, but really each individual family is different, and we need to speak with you individually about your needs so we can help you understand what's coming in your future in terms of costs for special needs in the future. And what is that going to look like for you and your family, and what bucket of money is that going to come from to pay for long-term care if that's needed, or special classes? What can your ABLE account cover? What can it not pay for? Why would you need a special needs trust? How are you going to support your child past age 18 and for the rest of their life, and once you pass away? So really, we look at each individual family. We offer a free consultation for everybody, and kind of just listen a lot, ask some questions, and see where we can go from where you are and how we can help you. So the next slide, this is our team. Allison, the first picture there is the owner, her husband, Jeff. There's me with my scrunched down picture, and my husband, Andy, and then we have some office staff. We're a collaborative team, so no matter who you get, we're all here to help you, all of us on the team. And then finally, the last slide, there you go. There's our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel and our phone numbers again. And I really appreciate you being here, Dr. Becht, and everybody who has joined us for this webinar. Thank you so much. Feel free to reach out to any of us, and I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.